Welcome back. It houses one of the most important organs of your body, your head. And that skull, though, will only do so much during a freak accident to protect your brain. You can prevent traumatic brain injuries by simply wearing a helmet. Now, joining me this morning to carry on that discussion is Nicole Shotwell, who's Vice President, Programs and Operations at the Brain Injury Association of Michigan, along with Dr. Casey Madura, who's pediatric surgeon at Helen DeVos Children's Hospital. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So how does this Think Ahead program really incentivize for kids to wear that helmet?
So in the communities, and at this point it's ski season, right? So on the slopes, we are incentivizing kids with coupons for McDonald's, for any kid that we see out skiing wearing a helmet, whether they're skiing or snowboarding. On the flip side though, when we do find kids or adults who are not wearing a helmet, we are incentivizing them with a coupon for 20% off the purchase of a helmet at more than 25 different ski shops throughout the state.
And education plays a very big role in this as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's very important.
So let's talk about that education, what people do need to know when it comes to wearing those helmets, right? And I know that one thing that the Think First program is really important to you as somebody who is a pediatric surgeon, correct? So how are they talking about this in schools?
Well, I think the biggest issue is to help children and teenagers, and frankly anybody, understand that helmets prevent the most serious injuries, the ones that cause brain injury that no matter what I do, I can't make better. And I think the other piece of it is helping people understand that injuries can happen in all things. We've seen increases in sledding injuries. We've seen increases in injuries in sports like soccer and sports and things that aren't traditionally considered to be collision type sports, whereas everybody knows about football. But this happens in all areas of life these days, and the reality is once a bad injury happens, we can't make it better. What we can do is to keep it from getting worse. So the whole focus on all of this is prevention.
Absolutely. And you start them young, then the coolness factor is already there. Like, it's cool to wear my helmet when I'm on my bike, you know, that sort of thing, right? You need to educate the parents. When I was young, I went all over the countryside without a helmet. And I look back and think of how many times I had some very close calls, right? So starting with parents sometimes too is important.
Yes, starting with parents and starting as early as possible in repeating the message over time so that it becomes a behavioral thing as opposed to just one time this person from the hospital came in and told me I should wear a helmet. The whole idea here is to make it more normal to wear a helmet.
Sure. So working in the medical field, what types of injuries are you seeing? You talked about sledding and that sort of thing, but kind of expand on that a little bit about some of these injuries you're seeing and the lifelong problems.
Sure. I mean, the injuries that everybody sees are things like concussions, but the ones they don't see very often unless they have a family member or friend that's been affected are the severe ones, the ones that cause people to have trouble with speech or people to have trouble with weakness on one side of the body or the other. Those are the ones that we can't make better. We are lucky because we work with kids and kids can heal better. But the reality is we see those injuries happen in all things, simple things. Even people walking, looking at their phone, not paying attention to what's going on. We see an increase in pedestrian trauma, especially over the last few years, has been really prevalent, unfortunately.
So if you think someone has a concussion, what should you do?
First and foremost, the reality is if it feels like an emergency, that's what 911 is for, that's what the ER is for. I think with better education, recognition of what a concussion is, will transition from the person who loses consciousness, which is not a requirement to have a concussion, to a person who says, I got hit in the head and I don't feel right. That's the most common way people say things. And I think recognition of that, the person that doesn't pass out but says, I don't feel right, that's probably the biggest area where people aren't necessarily thinking of that as a concussion, even though it is.
All right, well, we could talk about this for a very long time, extremely important topic year-round, but to learn more about the Think Ahead program and the campaign that they have going on, you can go to biami.org/thinkahead. Thanks so much for what you're doing and putting it out there in the spotlight.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.